And this kind of relates to what I wanted to speak about today still, because there's a lot going on in the world in relation to the topic of history. Yeah, the topic of history and the importance of history, and the extent to which we should engage in explorations and analysis of history. I live, as Onono, in what is referred to as the United Kingdom of Great Britain. All right. And for a number of years now, under the uh, agenda of the restoration of British values, this is talk that's been going on for the last 20 odd years. Yeah, remember them talk there under Tony Blair, yeah, who was elected in 1997, and in the latter half of his premiership as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, there was a lot of talk about restoring British values because the idea that British values had taken a knock somehow, yeah, and were not being promoted in British society. And in with that, the, in that context, uh, activism has continued within the UK and within the Caribbean and the continent, yeah, and throughout the Americas for that matter. And the issue of reparatory justice in relation to the Ma'afa. When we say the Ma'afa, that's a Kiswahili terminology, which has been popularized by Mama Marimba Ani, and it simply means the great disaster. Yes, and we're referring to here the invasion of our lands, peoples, communities, the conquest of our lands, peoples, communities, and nations, the enslavement of the same, and the colonization of the same. It's very important that we understand this terminology, ma'afa. Yeah. Bear it in mind, and the point to emphasize here is that when we refer to ma'afa, we are not just referring to slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. We're referring to invasion, conquest, kidnapping, enslavement, and all that came with enslavement, including all of the rape, all of the torture, colonization, and neocolonization. All right, that's what we're referring to. All of those things brings us right up to the present. We're now just talk about slavery, the transatlantic so-called slave trade. Okay, and since CARICOM, the Caribbean community, the political entity known as the Caribbean community, heads of state have got together and began to petition for reparations, reparatory justice in relation to the horrors of enslavement and colonialism and the underdevelopment that has persisted in the Caribbean as a result. British society has organized itself in order to engage the historical question, in order to negate the viability and the legitimacy of reparatory justice in relation to African people. And true to form, American society has done and is doing the same thing. Yeah. And I've said before, another day we're going to go into the existence of think tanks as political institutions that are designed to influence public opinion and affect public policy. Okay. And I mentioned that now in passing just to say When you hear a lot of the same talking points being projected in the media in particular, picked up by populations and repeated constantly on social media, understand that often this is not an accident. This is a very deliberate process that is engaged by political think tanks, people that sit down and just discuss policy and ideas and how these policies and ideas should be disseminated, dispensed, and effected. Yeah. And they're very good, yes, at the jobs that they do. All right. And there is symbiotic relationship between the think tanks as they exist in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the think tanks as they exist in the United States of America, partly because they have the same origin, down to the same individual in some instances. Okay, Kangol, I see you, Masoon come. Yeah, the link is in the description, family. Yeah, sorry, the link is in the chat if you want to join the panel, yes, and hold a conversation with the eye. Feel free to come and do so. And you can either speak to the points that I'm raising or raise your own points. It's all well and good. Yeah. And one brother has just decided to do so. And so we're going to come to him very soon, kings and queens. All right. We're not itch the thing. That's why, deal with that subject here. And if you're watching on Gotkush TV live, you will find the link at the top here, pinned at the top of the chat. All right. Yeah. So what was I on this thing now? Yeah. So yeah, the think tanks, they're very linked to each other. And so a lot of the same talking points are developed and dispensed in similar kinds of ways as far as the UK and the USA is concerned. And both these nations at the moment are dealing with the rising force and cry of Africans within and around their nations and political axis in relation to the subject of reparatory justice. Yeah. And so those of us who speak on these issues often will find our social media pages flooded, as I've been experiencing recently. Yeah, with random European individuals, yeah, who repeat the same talking points. All right, them have the same argument, all of them. And some of these individuals are real people, and some of them are CIA and FBI and MI6 and MI5 bots. Yeah, we have to know that. All right. So there's been some talk about reparations in the UK recently, and there's been some talk about reparations in the US recently. And a lot of this is revolving around how you read the history. In order to negate and neutralize the just call for reparatory justice, and it is a just call, a very just call, yes. And it's a just call whether they are going to submit to the justice of that call or not. What I mean by that is the justness of the call is not dependent upon the logistics of whether they are going to engage in it or not. Yeah. The justice of the call stands alone. The justice of the call stands alone. But the idea now is in Britain, the call is in the restoration of British values. We need to speak about the good of the British Empire. This is what is being said. Yes. We focus too much on the bad, and the British do not want anymore to feel ashamed of the British Empire. They want to feel proud of it. And so we must feel good about the British Empire and what it gave to the world. Yeah, and this has been a talking point for, I'd say, about 2 decades, but intensified over the last decade in the UK. All right. And we're seeing a similar thing in the United States of America. Again, been a good talking point for the last decade at least, and intensified over the last, I'd say, 5 years. Yeah. Where we're seeing now, America wants to talk about the good. Yeah. Not just of American empire, but specifically as it relates to the enslavement of African people, as it relates to the genocide, yes, that was committed against the indigenous peoples of North America, of the Americas in general, but in this instance, because we're focusing on the United States, we're going to say North America. All right. So recently, there's been a literal politician, Senator Ron DeSantis, yeah, in Florida, and they've been commissioning a rewriting of the curriculum to engage in the teaching of history in ways that valorize America and teach the positive. Yeah. And one of the main talking points that has come out of this is the benefits that Africans got from slavery. It's the idea that Africans were taught viable trades, which became useful to us following slavery. So if I'm not for slavery, would I never learn how to be blacksmith and carpenter, and all of these things. Yeah. These are the talking points that are going on at the moment, and we don't have time to figure in all of the levels and the details of the argumentation today. The main point that I want to highlight just right now, yeah, and this is not limiting it to anything we're on the one raise later on in the conversation, is the fact that on the one hand, when we discuss and begin to analyze, yeah, the history, one of the major talking points is get over it. That's been a long-standing talking point. It's history. Yes. Why are you focusing so much on history? Yeah. And they say things like slavery ended hundreds of years ago, which is not the case. Slavery ended just over 100 years ago, as in the formal transatlantic enslavement process. All right. It's just over 100 years ago that it was apparently abolished. Okay. Followed directly by a colonial process. All right. Which is important in terms of the definition of ma'afa. But the same people who say get over it, why are we focusing on history, are fundamentally engaged with history and attempting to tell it in ways that shore up and establish and maintain their own power systems. Give me 1 second. So we see that the issue is not the exploration of history. These people are very, very interested in the exploration of history as long as it suits the maintenance of white power. And they're concerned that when the people who have been colonized in the interest of white power begin to write history for ourselves, that historical analysis will create an environment that delegitimizes feed them power. That's what they're concerned about. All right. And so to close my longer than expected ramblings this evening, I want to read two quotations, yeah, from the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Because we are lead up to the month of Mosiah today. Yeah. And the first, both are quoted in this book, Race First, yeah, by Baba Tony Martin. And the first says this, it's on history, and the second will be on propaganda. It says you assume a right to write history within the last 500 years, and simply because you have been able to dump so many tons of your history in the world and other people have not said anything by way of complaint, you think your history rests there. But a lot of things your Mr. Wells has said, we Negroes treat as bunk. Here he's referring to noted writer H.G. Wells. He's responding to certain things that H.G. Wells said. Yeah. Um. Where am I at? H.G. Wells may divert civilization for the benefit of his Anglo-Saxon group, but that does not make it the fact that the people who laid claim to the civilization he attributed to others are going to give it up easily. The black man knows his past. It is a past of which he can be nobly proud. That is why I stand before you this afternoon, a proud black man who would be nothing else in God's creation but a black man. All right? That's one quotation from the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And the second one that I want to read is this one. Papa Garvey says, the great white man has succeeded in subduing the world by forcing everybody to think his way. From his God to his fireside, he has given to the world from his Bible to his yellow newspaper sheet a literature that establishes his right and sovereignty to the disadvantage of the rest of the human race. His right and sovereignty to the disadvantage of the rest of the human race. The white man's propaganda has made him the master of the world. And all those who have come in contact with it and accepted it have become his slave. The Universal Negro Improvement Association is now calling upon 400 million members of our race to discard the psychology and propaganda of all other peoples and to advance our own. The white man has taught that the best of the world was intended for him, and now we teach that all the beauties of creation are the black man's, and he is heir to all that God has given to man. So this last one in particular is very instructive, yeah, because we have to just appreciate love the fact that when Papa Garvey says that we must discard the psychology and propaganda of all other peoples in Message to the People, the course of African philosophy, he has a chapter on propaganda, and he talks about history as propaganda. Yeah. So when we discard the colonizer's history, we are discarding the colonizer's propaganda. And in doing so, the colonizer understands that we are challenging his rights and sovereignty over the world to the disadvantage of the rest of the human race. That is all that is taking place at the moment, family. Yeah. It's not even, so they will lie. Yes. The issue for them is not the truth or the non-truth. The issue for them is having a history that establishes freedom, right, and sovereignty to the disadvantage of the rest of the human race. And in particular, in this instance, the African race. I'm gonna pause there, kings and queens. I'm gonna bring through the brothers who have clicked the link to come through. The link is in the chat, family. The link is in the chat. If you want to come through, join the chat. You are invited. You are invited. You are invited. As when we in Ghana, and we sit down and I eat some food. Somebody walk past, and you know what I mean. You say you are invited. Means you can come and take part in the dining experience. Yeah? You can come take piece of the food. You are invited. You know what I mean. So kings and queens, you're invited. Yeah. And I'm gonna bring through the brother Kangol, PI right here now, and also the brother Set Imhotep. Yeah. So as said, my brothers, you can feel free to contribute to the talking points that I have raised this evening, or feel free to raise your own, and we will try to engage them within reason. And brothers and sisters, I've received your criticisms of I, sorry, in relation to how I facilitate the panel. Yeah, so I'm gonna do my best. Yeah, to make sure that everybody and all the people them talking points, are what's the word? Equally heard or sufficiently. There's equity in the distribution of the panel and the talking points that are raised in terms of how and the extent to which they are discussed on the panel. All right. So more what I mean, I listen to Ono and we're gonna try, work it out. So in order of appearance, greetings, Kangol. What you say?